Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Jeff Sharon and Eric Lopez.
Welcome to the show. It is championship week. We've got a loaded show for you here this week. Jeff Sharon here along with you. Eric's taking the week off. Stat Boy Drew is in the house, the master of the non sequitur, the college football hipster himself. Andrew Glukov is here. Those are the only two I can remember. I need to write these down somewhere. So I
think you should forget them and forget they ever existed.
No, I'm not going to do that. Yes, the Leroy Jenkins of UCF Twitter Mafia. We got a lot to talk about here, Drew. Kyle's going to join us later to talk hoops. Bryson's going to join us even later than that to talk volleyball. But first and foremost, we got a lot of football to talk. Obviously, UCF hanging on by their fingernails against South Florida in a game that I thought encapsulated perfectly why it's a rivalry game, because the records just don't matter. These two teams just take it personally all the time. But UCF's 46-39 victory over South Florida, Alec Holler's incredible catch, means that the Knights will indeed play for the American Athletic Conference Championship. It will be 4:00 on Saturday. UCF at Tulane. Tulane going into Nippert Stadium in Cincinnati, beating the Bearcats in a winner take the hosting honors game, Drew. And that was the first time that actually Tulane had won in Nippert Stadium in Cincinnati since their undefeated season in 1998 with Tommy Bowden and Sean King. And Tulane right now is a 4-point favorite over UCF. A lot of questions coming in. What's the status of John Rhys Plumlee, who obviously got hurt in the South Florida game? I think that it was in no small part a factor in South Florida's comeback. But again, Mikey Keene again with the incredible save. But here we are. We still have some questions coming into this week. But where does it stand right now for UCF as they head into their third conference championship game in school history?
Well, in American history.
Sure. In American Athletic Conference school history.
Yeah.
By the way, going for their fifth American championship.
Right. Since, 2015 was the first year of the conference championship game. Before that, it was just based on standings, and they had, of course, the three-way tie in 2014. So they all get credit there. Everyone gets a trophy. It's like an Oprah Winfrey show. Kind of putting a bow on the USF game. I've always said the same thing you believe. When it comes to rivalry games, records go out the window. You might as well both be 0-0 because weird things happen.
Mm-hmm. We saw it last year.
And last year was such a dud of a game that ESPN decided not to have that game as locked in to Black Friday going in. Obviously, there was 3 American games vying for one Black Friday spot. Went to Cincinnati Tulane, which turned out to be the right move. Was a fantastic game. Granted, Cincinnati's down to their backup quarterback. But Tulane wins, hosts the conference championship game. Great story from New Orleans on that camp. New team rising up, especially one that's being held, staying in the American Athletic Conference. So obviously, member schools that are sticking around would like to see Tulane win, but UCF coming in there. You talk about with the divine intervention that was the Alec Collar touchdown catch, because as we saw that, you zoom in real carefully.
Not to mention the Javon Baker catch too.
He's been doing that stuff all year, though. I mean, we the timing was perfect, but let's be honest, Javon Baker's been making catches like that all year. I mean, that's him, and thankfully he's got another year of required being in college before he can make a break to the NFL. So, I expect him to be around next year to continue the good vibes. But it just goes to show how talented the skill position is, in between, the receiving core and even down to the tight ends. I mean, this is a really talented bunch. I mean, the transfer portal, giveth and taketh away. And in more cases than not for UCF, it has been in the giveth category, especially on offense. Between Kobe Hudson and Javon Baker, this is a scary good, group of receivers. The fact that I haven't even mentioned Ryan O'Keefe, who is the holdover, just shows how good they are. At that point, you're building towards the future, but the future is now. Some people were kind of punting on next year, towards next year before the season even started. You and I both believe that was the incorrect way of thinking.
Right.
This season still had to go on. And look, lo and behold, there's a Cotton Bowl berth on the line. This actually has worked out rather well.
Yeah, and the giant paycheck too, not to mention the, there's just a lot of storylines at play here. I think the most interesting one to me is the fact that you have a departing team playing a remaining team in this game. And just a couple of little interesting historic notes that I was able to dig up.
This has happened before in UCF's history.
Yes, but a win obviously would give UCF its 5th AAC title in 10 seasons in the league. This is Tulane's first AAC championship appearance. They haven't won a conference of any kind since 1998. The home team, Drew, is 6-1 all time in the AAC championship. The only road team ever to win was Temple, who went into Annapolis and beat Navy in 2015. Interestingly enough. This is also the 4th time that the championship has been a rematch of a regular season game. UCF won 2 of the previous 3 over Memphis in 17 and 18. Now, 17, both those games were at UCF. 18, they were split between Memphis and UCF, the locations of those games. 2019, Memphis also played Cincinnati twice. That was back-to-back weeks at the Liberty Bowl. This would be the first time that if UCF is able to pull this off, it would be the first time that the road team will have won both meetings in the course of one season. That's never happened in the history of the conference. So there's a lot of storylines at play, though. I think a couple ones that I want to emphasize. First of all, home team is 6-1. All right. Big advantage being at home for this game. Number 2, Tulane still troublesome in the run game. I was looking at the numbers for the season now that we're through, and credit to Willie Fritz, coach of the year in the conference name this past week, but his team is still rather average against the run in terms of defense. 7th in the conference, 74th in FBS, and UCF took advantage of that. I remember John Rhys Plumlee set the school record for rushing yards by a quarterback in the first 10 minutes of the first game. This is a team that defends the pass well. They're 13th in the country and first in the American in passing yards allowed per game. First in the American in points per game allowed, 19.8. Second in the conference in total yards per game allowed. But they can still be had on the ground, no?
Oh, absolutely. This is the best situation for UCF to be in, all things considered, since, obviously hosting wasn't an option at this point, to play Tulane versus Cincinnati for a variety of reasons. One is obviously what's on the field, and two, what's actually off the field. You're talking going to New Orleans versus Cincinnati, different weather conditions, different stadium situation. Tulane doesn't get as much attendance. It's easier for UCF fans to get to because, as we know, conference controls the ticket sales and all that jazz. We've seen it before.
There's been some
question
shenanigans.
Let me be very clear. This is not Tulane withholding. This is not UCF not selling out their allotment. Both sides of that argument are wrong. This is what the American has done in previous years. They let tickets go in waves. They did this when UCF hosted. They let it go in waves. It creates scarcity and inventory control. It's good marketing on their part. But this is not a case of, Tulane lied to us, blah, blah, blah. Or, UCF, your fans can't buy out the whole lot. No. This is the American fully at work here. They've done this before. They'll do it again. And
they did it for us before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a benefit to the home team. They want the home team to be able to reap the benefit. Okay, fair, because they've earned that shot. They've earned it.
Yeah. Also, it looks better to have a full stadium on TV than a. Yeah. You ever seen the MAC championship in Detroit? There's nobody there.
No, because I don't bother. But the truth is, this is what the American does. This is nothing new. Both sides just need to chill out, just calm down. I know everyone's getting a little amped up for the game, but this is going to be an exciting game. UCF in a prime opportunity. They can have lots of fans there. Their team is built offensively to win this game. They're a run first team. Tulane is not a run first defense team, as you've already mentioned.
No, in fact, they struggled against the run even just as recently as last week. Cincinnati ran for 235 yards in total and 3 touchdowns as a team on 43 carries. Rarely do you see a team rush the ball for 43 times and lose it home.
Well, it's more of a fact that we know what you are. Try to beat us with your weaknesses. And I think actually if Ben Bryant was playing, I'm convinced Cincinnati would have won that game. It was a toss-up game at the end. It was very close. Cincinnati.
Evan Prater did not have a very good game.
No. So let's flip the script to UCF. The real question is the status of John Rhys Plumlee, like you mentioned. We've heard day-to-day, quote unquote, which UCF likes. They're going to play it coy. But the truth is, as Gus Malzahn mentioned in the post-game, interviews, that Plumlee's been kind of dinged up for a while. He's been beat up for a while. So,
in fact, let's go. I want to go ahead and play Gus talking about JRP right now.
We're going to let him play. He hadn't been 100% for a while, and he's just a tough guy. But this is a championship game, and I know he'll be ready to go.
All right, as you heard, there's a lot going on with John Rhys Plumlee. His status day to day. He's been dealing with injuries. Has a hammy issue that, if you remember watching the game, he got kind of pulled lame, scoring that second rushing touchdown.
Yep.
And it affected him after that. He tried throwing the ball. He couldn't plant. It wasn't working. So, that's why he was pulled out at halftime, replaced with Mikey Keene. You got
with the game seemingly in hand.
It was looked pretty much in the books by then. It was 28-7 at halftime. And then the wheels just fell off. Murphy's Law kind of latched on, and anything that could go wrong did go wrong. But you know what? That's in the past. They moved on. They survived in advance.
Yeah, survive in advance. That's right.
Survive in advance. So now it's about making sure he's healthy enough to play. As Malzahn has said, the guy's a baller. He'll go out even with beat up, and he just wants to play. He wanted to play in the second half last week. Coaching staffs wisely held him out, but if he can go, he's going to go, and that's going to matter. because with the rushing defense or lack thereof of Tulane, they got to now deal with an extra running back in the backfield. And that's dangerous. I mean, You saw him carve apart Tulane before. In fact, the big touchdown that he ran against USF was the same big touchdown play.
Same exact scheme.
Not even just scheme, same exact play. I mean, it was the same play, same result. So, I mean, hey, you know what? Do it again. See if they're paying attention. You know, people sometimes complain, oh, they ran the same play. Well, it's because you didn't stop it the first time. So you know what?
Yeah. Run it again. Run it again.
Do it again.
Some more sound I wanted to drop in here. Here's Willie Fritz, the head coach of Tulane, talking about the game.
What's going to be one thing that you want to change from the first meeting to this meeting that you think can make a difference in the game from watching the film of the first meeting? What's one thing that has to change for your team to be successful?
Well, you know, we got to do a better job with the quarterback run. You know, you got to play 11-on-11 football against Gus's team, and you know, we got to do a better job playing the quarterback. We didn't do a great job of that, and then we didn't play great offensively early in the ball game as well. You know, we got to play consistently throughout all four quarters. So those are a couple things.
All right, so that was Willie Fritz, head coach of Tulane. Also, we heard from Mike Aresco, the commissioner of the American. This is UCF's final go-round in the American in terms of football. Obviously, we still have the spring to go, but here's Aresco talking about this final championship game with UCF as a participant.
Commissioner, just curious, how big of an impact does Tulane appearing in the championship, how good a look is it for you guys as you kind of retool and reboot as a conference that they've made the run that they have?
It means something, Kyle, and it's encouraging also because, you know, again, as I said, we've had a lot of teams in this conference compete pretty seriously over the years. You know, the focus was on the three teams leaving, but Temple had great years under Matt Rule in this conference and went to our championship game, won it, 1 year, almost beat Notre Dame in one of the, what would have been one of the most stunning upsets. You know, we had obviously great seasons out of Memphis. That Memphis-UCF rivalry was incredible for a number of years. UCF, that game they played on Black Friday several years ago might have been one of the best college football games ever played. You know, we've had all these teams step up. So the fact that we now have Tulane is great. You know, I'm not rooting for either team. You know, UCF has been a great addition to our conference. We're thrilled, obviously, for Tulane as well. But it does show, I think, Kyle, the depth of the conference. And also, you know, we've had committed administrators, hats off, to Troy Dannon at Tulane and also to Terry Mahajer and before him, Danny White at UCF. And, Alexander Cartwright and Mike Fitz, the two presidents, they've really committed. And this league has had a commitment. And I think we're going to get a commitment from the new members as well. So I hope the DNA continues because it's been real. People have competed at the highest level. Does mean a lot that you have a team like Tulane, but if Cincinnati had won, I'd have been happy for them. I mean, Luke has been he's been great for our conference. Cincinnati's been great for our conference. And had they won a hard-fought game, then they'd be playing UCF, and that'd be great also. But no, we're excited about what the future might hold for this conference, even though it's going to be different. There's no question, no argument there.
So that was Mike Aresco, commissioner of the American. Drew, as you mentioned, the winner is going to the Cotton Bowl. No correct. Other conference champion, it looks as though, is going to be ranked, or at least ranked ahead of the winner of this game. Tulane is 18. UCF is 22. Should UCF win, I imagine they would climb. Coastal's not ranked. They lost. They may have had a chance, I think, if they won this past week, but they didn't. They got absolutely boat raced by James Madison, by the way. So the winner goes to the Cotton Bowl. Well, here's the question, though. Let's talk real quick about which opponent UCF might see. There's obviously it's bowl prediction season. Everyone's out there, including us, with some good bowl predictions. Some intriguing matchups being thrown around for whichever representative of the American goes to the Cotton Bowl. Who are you seeing? Who do you think it's going to be if UCF gets through?
Well, it's going to be one of two teams, and we'll quickly break down. So if you kind of go with the chalk results, everyone who's supposed to win wins. UCF would play Penn State, and the reason why is Ohio State would end up in the Rose Bowl. And then you would have Alabama in the sugar.
Michigan obviously in the playoff.
Michigan in the playoffs, Georgia in the playoffs, TCU and USC. So you would have Washington would be kind of that odd man out. You'd have Oregon as your Rose Bowl. You would have Alabama in the sugar as the next highest SEC team. Then Tennessee in the orange, which would leave Penn State in the cotton. However, and that's where 99% of the bowl predictions, including ours, are going, because that's the logical way of looking at it. And even if Ohio State somehow slips in, you can make maybe case that maybe USC would end up in the cotton, which I guess is a real outside third chance. I don't think it's overly likely. But the other intriguing matchup is the Tennessee Volunteers.
I would argue that's the most intriguing matchup for fairly obvious reasons.
Well, yeah, the story writes itself. So let's break this down.
Josh Heupel against his old team.
Let's break this down, how this happens and why there's actually a legitimate chance of this happening.
All right.
So the Rose Bowl is not required to take the highest finishing Big Ten team that's not the champion. Michigan wins, they're the champion. Right. They're not required to take the next team. And the reason why is as long as they're within a reasonable margin, Ohio State 5th, Penn State 8th, they can actually go for Penn State. Penn State hasn't been there since 2016, 2017 range, somewhere around there. So Ohio State was there just last year. They've been there a few times in recent years. So there is a leaning towards Penn State as a new opponent, which would mean you'd have to shuffle the bowl line a little bit. Alabama will still be in the sugar because of their contract. However, the Orange Bowl has the option of the SEC, the Big Ten, or Notre Dame. And it breaks down to, in their contract, they have 3 years exclusivity for each of those conferences, Big Ten, SEC. So they can flip the script and take Ohio State instead of Tennessee, which would bump Tennessee down to the Cotton Bowl. And then they would be, the opponent for UCF, which, look what happened last year.
Oh, that would be so much fun. That would be so much fun.
I always tell people,
oh man,
pre-Christmas bowl games is like a consolation prize. It's not really what you want. However, last year was kind of an exception because of the story around it. It just kind of fell in their laps. This is kind of, you sell a story more than anything else. Josh Heupel versus former team. The upstart versus, a blue blood program that has made its triumphant return to relevancy. I mean, this would actually be a very compelling story, way more so than UCF versus Penn State.
Oh, I agree. I mean, even though UCF and Penn State have played before,
there's no real story there, though. There's no story.
I mean, rematch of the game in Ireland.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, whatever. And that one ended, of course, on a game-winning field goal by Penn State. But
not to mention the game that UCF won in Happy Valley the year before, too, in 2013. So
right, and I was in Happy Valley in 2002 when UCF waited.
That game was not as close.
that game was a field goal. At one point, you could hear a pin drop in Happy Valley, but the problem was UCF waited too long to realize that the forward pass was a legal thing and couldn't catch up in time. But here's the thing, Penn State played in the Cotton Bowl just a few years ago against Memphis. So, I mean, they've been there. I don't recall off the top of my head.
They beat Memphis in that game too, right?
They did.
Yeah.
Tennessee has not been to the Cotton Bowl in the CFP era. So, I mean, there's also that newness factor there. The fact that this is their first, season back in top caliber relevancy would spur fan interest. And I know a lot probably do not want to play UCF because, UCF is, at least for this year, is the token G5 school. But there's a story involved. And I think you can create something with that.
It's funny how they kind of look at the G5 champ in these bowl games as kind of like a live landmine. Be careful.
Oh, it totally is. It's
and
totally
understandably so. The other bit I think that could vote in Tennessee's favor is they're probably going to get better travel than Penn State. I mean, that's a long trip from Happy Valley, Western Pennsylvania, down to Dallas. And I think, the Tennessee fans will be much more willing to make that trip than the Penn State fans. That's my opinion.
Well, I mean, they're a big enough fan base that they can travel enough. But I mean, you're talking about Jerry World in Arlington, Texas, big stadium.
Yeah.
UCF's going to send their fans there. It's not as close as Atlanta, but it's not Phoenix.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's opportunity to have a really good turnout. But as you know, the truth is it's about eyeballs. And I think they're going to get eyeballs no matter who goes.
Speaking of college football bowl games, and this is made official just before we started this show, the Rose Bowl, which you mentioned, has been the traditional stick in the mud, no pun intended, for college football playoff expansion. We've heard time and time again, this is, wasn't going to happen, the move to 12 teams until at least 2026. Lo and behold, it's happening in 2024. Pete Thamel was the first to report this, but the CFP made it official today, Thursday, December the 1st, that the college football playoff will expand to 12 in the final two seasons of the contract, 2024 and 2025. In 2024, the first round of the playoff will take place the week ending Saturday, December 21st at either the home field of the higher seeded team or at another site designated by the higher seeded school. For top four teams get buys, of course. Specific game days will be announced later. For 2024, the quarterfinals and semis will be played in bowls on a rotating basis, and 2025, of course. 24, the quarters will be at the Fiesta, Peach, Rose, and Sugar. Cotton and Orange will host the semis. 25, the quarters will be at the Cotton, Orange, Rose, and Sugar, while the Fiesta and Peach host the semifinals. Interesting that the Rose Bowl won't have a semifinal those 2 years.
Just the way the rotation worked out.
Right. National championship games will be played January 20th, 2025 and January 19th, 2026 in Atlanta and Miami, respectively. This means that $450 million will be into the hands of the CFP. It means that UCF may very well have another couple of some extra opportunities to make the playoff as they go into the Big 12. It'll be easier for them. It would be easier for them, obviously, than being in the American. But we've said this for years, actually, for almost a century now. The one thing that's prevented us, if you had to point to it, the biggest thing that's prevented us from having a true playoff in Division I FBS college football has been the Rose Bowl. They've had their contract with the Big Ten and the Pac-12 for years. All the time, even up until the BCS era, they were the stick in the mud that would say, nope, we're not gonna change our contract because we're the Rose Bowl. Finally, that's over with. The presidents told the ADs, knock it off, figure it out. And they did. And there were reports of, I guess, what we call it, an ultimatum, a deadline for the Rose Bowl to figure out what they want to do or possibly get left behind. And they decided to hop on board.
They tried multiple things. They tried to get various accommodations. Everything got shot down. It got to the point of, you said ultimatum. It's exactly what it was. You do it our way or you don't do it at all, is what the CFP eventually said. And
hop on board or get left behind.
Yeah, and eventually the Rose Bowl people realized this is the future. Either be a part of the future or get left behind in the past. More importantly,
I think what it comes down to is they realize that they are not as important as they once were or maybe think they are.
Well, at this point, the need of them has been eliminated. They don't need the Rose Bowl. Say, hypothetically speaking, the Rose Bowl punted and passed. There are plenty of options of games that they talk about. They talk
reportedly about, the Citrus Bowl was one of them.
Citrus Bowl was one. The ReliaQuest, formerly the Outback Bowl, was another in Tampa.
Formerly the Hall of Fame Bowl. Everyone
Go way, way back. Then they also talked about doing something in SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, basically thumbing their nose at the Rose Bowl by just putting something else in SoCal.
Creating a new bowl game in nice, Los Angeles,
brand new stadium. It kind of sold itself. So it's good that the Rose Bowl decided to stick around. It's a mainstay tradition. Obviously, the Rose Parade does not lead to the game necessarily anymore. And you know what? The Rose Parade can stand on its own. It's a special event out on its own. It doesn't need the game attached to it that day. So I think it's going to be an adjustment, especially for those traditionalists. But you know what? This is better for everyone involved. This is a win-win. There's revenues that are going to come to the bowl games. There is opportunity for all schools. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, this is only going to help the SEC or whatever. You know what? I challenge them. Give it 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
You're good with the transfer portal, the way it is, with the free transfer in place. And now you have a guaranteed opportunity, a real opportunity, not this, it's an opportunity on paper. No, it's a real opportunity. You finish as one of the top 6 conference champions. So if you can, run the table, be that 6th champion, any school in FBS can get into the playoff.
Yep.
They have a legit opportunity now that they haven't had before. And it's going to take time. But you know what? Players are going to start realizing, you know what? I want to win a championship and I want to be on the field doing it. And riding the bench at Blue Chip U isn't what I want to do. But if I go to Eastern Michigan, I still have a shot. We can have our Cinderella run. The 2017 UCF squad would have a legitimate shot at a national championship in the CFP.
Mm-hmm.
They have a legitimate shot at a consensus national title, which back then they did not. So right. I challenge those who don't believe this is a good thing. Give it 10 years. Yeah, you'll see some schools pop up here and there, and they'll have the Cinderella run. But you know what? They'll get to settle it on the field, and that's something that we've been lacking in FBS football for over a century.
And it'll give us these, I think, some really fun irregular matchups, that we won't see very often. And we get to really determine which, who the best team in the country is at long last. I think it's fun. I think it's good for college football. And let's not diminish the fact that UCF played a part in making this happen. It was the Knights who in 2017 said the emperor had no clothes. The college football playoff is not the definitive determinant of the national championship. It is merely a determinant of a national championship, because how could it be totally determinative if we go undefeated and we don't get in it? And now we have as close to that. Now, Drew, you're going to laugh. I still feel like the perfect playoff is one that has every conference champion in it, but 6 out of 10 or maybe 9 if the Pac-12 goes away ain't bad. This is a great day, a great moment for the sport of college football. I think it will dramatically improve the quality of the play, and we'll finally get to settle these debates on the field. Mm-hmm. After 140 years of this, we'll finally settle it as it should be on that 120 by 53 in the 3rd yard patch of grass. And I can't ask for anything more than that. No matter where you go.
And I want to add something real quick, and it never gets brought up, but I think it actually plays a very important role too. You talk about 2017 UCF running the table, and then running wild with national championship. And there's 4 people that are not remembered, but they are heroes to this too, because they actually played a legitimate role. 4 people in the AP poll ranked UCF first.
Yep.
So, that also shows, as you said, the Emperor really had no clothes on. They also stood out and said, you know what? This is wrong. This system is flawed. And it took a while, but we've seen times here and there where it keeps getting proved that, you know what, the system isn't perfect. Any team can win any game on any given day, and we need to give opportunity. Settle it on the field, not in a boardroom. So I just want to point out that UCF received 4 first-place votes in the AP poll, and that also needs to be recognized because those guys are heroes too in the grand scheme of opening FBS football to everybody.
Yep, it's at long last. 2024, man. I'll tell you. Never thought I'd see the day. Never thought I'd see the day where, think about how tremendous that is going to be. Where in the 2024 season, we're going to see obviously UCF in the Big 12 starting next year. And that means and a 12-team playoff. By the way, an additional detail just dropped from Brett McMurphy. I want to thank Bryson Turner for passing this along. In the new 12-team playoff, the top 4 ranked conference champions will receive a first-round bye. So that's baked into the system. So that means no.
And that's by design. That's by design.
And McMurphy's being a little coy here. But he says so that means yes, UConn parentheses and Notre Dame close parentheses would never be able to get a first-round bye.
And I like to point out that this was actually the plan. The plan that's passed was the plan that was designed by those conference commissioners and those backroom deals going on and Jack Swarbrick, athletic director of Notre Dame, was part of it. He knew what he was signing on for with this whole conference championship thing. And he was okay with it. It eventually became the need of the many. And there may be a possibility that this kind of leans towards Notre Dame finally making a move. But we'll see on that.
But
something. They do have enough confidence.
Of course, you could argue the other way that, if that means that they're stuck in the first round, then South Bend gets a playoff game.
Only if they're in the top echelon.
Only if they're 5 through 8, but still.
If they're 9 through 12, obviously they have to go on the road. But that also speaks to their confidence in themselves as far as a program. I mean, it's Notre Dame. We can make it on our merit, without having to win a conference title. Sure.
Why not? All right.
We've done it before.
Yeah. Well, that's it's tremendous news. It's good for UCF. It's good for college football. But first things first, that football game. Dave Pasch is going to be, and Dusty Dvorak are going to be on the call on Saturday for UCF against Tulane. 4 p.m. kick on ABC, so it'll be on the big network. And like I said, Tulane's a 4-point favorite at home, despite the fact that UCF leads the overall series 10-2. Going back to 2001.
I was at that game.
Yeah, that was a game in the Superdome. That was
my first UCF game.
That was Alex Haynes scoring 4 touchdowns in the Superdome that day.
Yeah, I remember it was not many people there. It was a giant cavern. But that was because of 9/11 pushing back Louisiana Lafayette to the end of the season. Mm-hmm. That was my first UCF game as a student at the school. Was at Tulane, which itself was a trip and a half.
I
for
can
obvious
imagine.
Reasons. Reading between the lines.
Yeoman Stadium was opened, by the way, in 2000. I forget when that was open. Was it?
It's pretty new. Yeoman's pretty new, but it's not a big stadium. It only seats 30,000 people.
Right.
Which is another reason why it plays to UCF's advantage. Is one of the things that UCF struggled with in the game against Eastern Carolina, ECU, was the fact that momentum and the fans play a role in that. When momentum starts swinging to a home team, the fans help maintain it and then rebuild it.
Yeah.
You have to break through it more than once. Well, UCF scores to open the second half, starts cracking through that momentum, and then ECU scores again. It's over. The game was over at that point. So, the fans play a role. And if you have a smaller stadium, it's harder to establish that momentum.
Yeah. UCF, by the way, 2-1 in Yeoman all time. So, and that goes back to the very first meeting there was in 2015. That was the year that no one shall. That was the year that must not be named.
Not a good vintage.
But the last two games, the two games UCF has won in 2019 and 2022 have been decided by one score: 34-31 in 19, 38-31 last year. So it's going to be close. I think it's going to be this is going to be a tight game.
Yeah, and 3 points and always go to the home team. So you're talking Tulane by 1. I mean, it's a pretty pick even game. It really depends on which quarterback goes out there.
Yep,
it's going to make a big difference.
All right, when we get back, get Statboy Drew, or we'll keep Statboy Drew in. We'll get Kyle Nash in here to talk a little hoops. UCF men's and women's basketball rolling through their non-conference schedules with winning records so far. We'll get him and talk a little bit more about volleyball later on with Bryson Turner when we return. It's the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We're back after this.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
All right, we're back here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff and Drew with you. Kyle Nash is joining us here as well. We're going to talk hoops real quick. Hey, look, not too bad. Not too bad for both these squads. I'm going to start with the women first, Kyle. 5-0. It was a little tricky there at that Thanksgiving Classic over the weekend. Got that 79-74 double OT game against Samford.
Right.
Got that win, but then came back the next day when you think you'd be tired and beat SEMO by 26. They got Sam Houston on Thursday before they go to Auburn on Saturday. But I want to get your thoughts right now and so far how this has gone for Coach Messer and her program, because they're 5-0 right now. And granted, they're not exactly playing UConn every week, but can't ask for a better start than that.
I'll put it this way, Jeff, and looking for a good metaphor for a team that's been hurt a lot and struggling a lot because of it in FSU on the men's side. There is a good chance that with all the players they are missing with injury, that they could have gone that direction if Coach Messer had not have recruited as well as she has, Jeff. 5-0 with as many injuries as she's had is something impressive. But Kyle, they struggled against Campbell. I get it. Samford was close. Yeah, those could have just as easily been excused. I could help you with the press conference. Hey, it would have been better if we were full strength. Boom, there you go. Right? I am very impressed. We have seen it top to bottom on how deep this squad is. Even the freshmen are contributing, right? We've had a freshman in the starting lineup in Brianna Hardy get double digits scoring, doing it, I might add. So listen, if you're a UCF fan who is expecting the doom, the gloom after everything that had happened with the cupboard being cleaned out, rest assured that Satia Messer found the app to order more groceries and has delivered them thoroughly within that group.
They picked up right where they left off on defense, almost 21st in the country, averaging giving up 52.2 a game, even though they're scoring 71.6, which is 115th. The defense has been great. They're holding opponents to 31%. Who's been the star? Who's been the catalyst so far?
I mean, listen, there's a reason why Destiny Thomas is referred to as Old Faithful, and she may not have the air quotes personality of a star, but she has done things we haven't seen. What was it? I think we were saying it was 15 and 12 that she last put up. Double doubles happen with Destiny Thomas. 15 points being part of it. That is new. And it has started there. And why else, Jeff, are they better able to open the perimeter, to shoot the three and score with the three as much as they had? Because teams are forced to concentrate, to try and change their destiny by concentrating on Thomas.
Oh boy.
And it's not working. Don't you hate, Jeff? I'm still right.
Well, 5 games, 3
You
double-doubles
too.
for Desto. She had 12, and we mentioned 12 and 15 against Samford, 12 and 10 against SEMO, 3 of 6, including she was 6 of 8 from the line in that game against SEMO, which I think is probably the most encouraging thing to see there. So
Correct.
they got Sam Houston Thursday, Auburn Saturday. This Auburn game is going to be a real test.
Mhm.
What do you not to take anything away from Sam Houston, obviously? What do you want to see them improve this weekend?
Listen, turnovers for this group has been a problem overall. I know Coach Messer will want to see that improve. And what I want to see is how this group reacts when they have a team that is capable of being as physical as they are, right? You don't just grow Destiny Thomas on trees. So I want to see what that looks like. This will be the game I think that most tests Coach Messer's approach with positionless basketball, because being a jack of all trades gives you an advantage and versatility when you don't have a team that's necessarily great at one, but SEC teams in general have more size, right? And I'm relating this back a little bit to what we saw from the SEC last year when Arkansas and Tennessee both came to town, right? These were both teams with size and presence. And though that team known itself for size and presence under Coach Abe was challenged, right? The Arkansas win by a single point on the strength of Diamond Battle's heroic reverse layup. And then the Tennessee game being one that I know Coach Abe thought that they should have had, but Tennessee pulling it out because they had a more complete team effort and were able to contribute points from more places on the floor than UCF, who only had Diamond Battles in that. Granted, that was like the second home game of the season that year, but the punchline being that presence, I want to see what this group does against it. Obviously, we know Desto will be battling. This will be on Taylor Gibson and Brianna Hardy to see what they can really do as new contributors in the post.
And Kyle, as you said, it's going to be a physical game.
Yes.
Offensive rebound, second chance points. Destiny Thomas, obviously almost 5.5 offensive rebounds a game. And you mentioned Gibson and Hardy of having to, kind of focus on them. Who's your X factor at being able to generate those second opportunities?
Well, that's Brianna Hardy all day. And taking nothing from Tay Gibson, she's had her share of double-digit games. But overall, I think it starts with that putback ability, that second chance ability. It's a great call out by you, Drew. And when Desto doesn't do it, Brianna Hardy does. It's funny in the game I mentioned earlier, and I forget precisely who the opponent was. I think it was the opening home game of the year when Tay was out because she had a concussion issue or whatever it was, and Desto was fighting in the paint on the other side, boxing out. Brianna Hardy gets the and one. There were 2 ladies that came right up to her to celebrate. The transfer from Kansas State, Rachel Ranke, and then Destiny, just as, if not more excited, encouraging Brianna Hardy as well. And that's the kind of stuff you want to see. You want to see the youth step up and the older veteran players supporting her so she can continue to grow in such fashion.
Yeah. Interesting enough about Sam Houston, they played Tulane earlier this season on the 20th and got stopped by 39. Auburn played Sam Houston and beat them by 14, 90-76. So that gives you a little bit to go on in terms of, maybe the transitive property. Let's flip over to the men real quick while we got you, Kyle.
Yeah.
Coming off the Bahama Championship, they get the win over Evansville on Wednesday, 76-56. And we saw a little bit of Darius Johnson that day in preparation for Miami. They had the full complement out there in what I thought was a high-level college basketball game. UCF didn't come up with the W. They lost by 2. CJ Walker had 2 free throws at the end of the game to tie it. He missed the first one, had to miss the second one on purpose. But we saw some of the good and some of the bad. Some of the good for UCF, Darius looked great. 9 of 15, 24 points. He scored 15 in a row at one point. We saw 7 rebounds each from Taylor Hendricks and Brandon Suggs. Suggs, I thought, played great in that game.
Absolutely.
Hendricks had a rough day. He was 2 for 9. I thought he missed some shots that under normal circumstances he would have made. But this team did, despite the fact that they were outshot 48 to 45%, had a shot to win this game in a very physical game. This was a fight, and almost played UM to the draw. I think they look back on this and think, dadgummit, we should have had this one, don't you?
Well, I think either team that lost this would have felt like they had a chance to win it, because frankly, they both did. This was quite a fight, and you point out the little elements here and there, and it all. I think Taylor Hendricks's performance in the game is a bit of a metaphor for youth and adjustment being the big issue, air quotes, in this game. At the end of the day, too, I could just as simply, if I'm a fan, look at the 3-point percentage and see that being the subtle difference that made the difference. But overall, listen, if I didn't get a chance to talk to Johnny Walker after the game, or Johnny Walker.
Maybe you did get the chance to talk to Johnny Walker after the game.
Apparently, I talked to Johnny Walker before this damn podcast. That's what's no. Johnny Dawkins.
We're leaving that in, by the way.
Yeah, no, you should. It's funny. Happy holidays. Johnny Dawkins would say the same thing that jumps off the book to me too. Turnovers. I know both teams had 15, but Johnny Dawkins would have thought somebody had some Johnny Walker with 15 turnovers involved. But listen, at the end of the day, there's disappointment there because it's a loss. I get it. But how encouraged are you that DJ Darius Johnson jumps in 24 points? That's a career high, folks. And 2 for 5 from 3 isn't bad. I think the one thing that might, and I accent might very hard here, be a bit critiqued is he only had 1 assist, but okay, you put in that many points, I'm willing to let it slide. I think you nailed it. There's a couple moments, Hendricks is 2 for 9 from the field is not a typical performance from him. You will not see that every night. And
he looked like he was pressing a little bit. He did look, I don't want to say nervous, but he looked like he was like, he knew this was a big game. He got some good looks and just kind of had the yips a little bit sometimes, some good looks around the hoop. I think one of the things we're going to see is the chemistry between him and DJ kind of get in sync. And once it does, look out. It's going to be wild.
I'm with you. I think he might've been nervous of trying to not overstep the captain's bounds there. And I'll put this too. We would be remiss if we didn't mention Ithiel Horton here, because from my interpretation of what I've seen of him play so far, he is a wild card in both a good and I don't want to say bad way, but in an adverse way, let's say. He's capable of doing pretty much everything outside of shot blocking because, he's a guard. You're not looking for that. On the floor, from distance, driving and slashing to the hoop to get to the foul line, all of it. Which he did get some, he didn't get any free throws. That's one thing that jumps out too. Also 3 for 9 from the field, 1 for 5 from the 3. So that's part of that chaos element of his playing there. Listen, I don't know if his first shot was made or not, but if that was the case and you miss the next 2, attack the basket, get to the free throw line. And I think I'm pretty sure that Johnny Dawkins might have this conversation with him. Listen, if it's not falling, attack, get to the free throw line. Let's make those points back up. But
dude's built like a middle linebacker too. That's the part that I like about him too. If he gets ahead of steam, just get out the way. They have Samford on Sunday at 2. Samford, by the way, after a 6-0 start, has dropped 3 in a row, including they gave up 103 points to DePaul in the last game. But they've lost. They lost to Louisiana Tech by 3, Tennessee Southern by 2, and DePaul by 5. So, close games. This is their second of 5 straight road games. And I'll pose to you the same question about the men that I posed to the women. what do you want to see in this game coming up against Sanford? Because they have this game, then they got a week off before they play Tarleton State at home.
And listen, it's good. I think Dawkins has himself in a position. In Miami, it would have been nice to have been able to see things you need to build while you're winning. I think Dawkins has made that point. Certainly, he made it after the FSU game, where if you have a win where you feel like you play a little sloppy, you can still adjust. And that's a good thing, obviously. I think Sanford may represent that game as well. And what I would want to see is, while it's great to have Darius Johnson scoring, I want to see, if I'm Coach Dawkins, him now get to be more of that team leader to integrate guys, right? To where the Hortons and Hendrickses both feel more comfortable doing what it is that they're going to do. And perhaps they've enjoyed a little too much comfort behind the three-point arc, considering the prowess of their front court, Jeff, because you mentioned CJ Walker had a chance at the free throw line to tie it up. Unfortunately, it didn't go the right way. That happens sometimes when you got a big man shooting, and that is not a slight on CJ Walker. Matter of fact, our analysis isn't a slight on any of these players. I think they're all very good players in a game that just didn't go their way that night against a Miami team that's pretty good, Yeah. So
I think if we had CJ in here, he'd be like, you know what? I'm still mad at myself for missing this, because that's the kind of player he is. Like I want the ball in my hands, and
that's the kind of person he is. And I think if it comes up again, you're going to see him come up big and hit the jackpot in that moment. I'm with you, man.
That's what we hope for. So UCF against Sanford on Sunday. On the men's side, chance to go to 6-2 on the year. UCF women trying to keep their undefeated season going as they face Sam Houston on Thursday, Auburn on Saturday. They are 5-0 on the year. The student of the game, the SOTG on Twitter, Kyle Nash, stopping by to join us. Are we all going to get together and watch this game on Saturday?
No.
Well, you're not, because you're all the way out there. But we got to figure something out here. Like, it's a possibility, right?
I think so. Listen, it's just I've been trying to get together with you for a while, Jeff. No offense, but you're a busy dude.
I get it. Look, the Bills got to get paid. Them Bills ain't going to pay themselves. Someone's got to go out there and hunt that mastodon. All right. We are going to take a quick break. When we get back, we'll talk a little bit about some possible off-season coaching moves too. Drew and Bryson Turner is going to join us to preview UCF volleyball heading into the NCAA tournament. They win the American, or at least a share of the American, and are in Happy Valley to play Penn State when we return. This is the Black Gold Banneret Podcast, and we are back after this. We're back on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff and Drew with you, and Bryson Turner joining us. Before we dive into volleyball, I wanted to talk about something here. We had one definite coaching change at the top of the American in football. I know we're going back to football, but I wanted to talk about this. And one near coaching change in the American. Luke Fickell is leaving Cincinnati after he signed that tremendous contract. He is leaving Cincinnati for Wisconsin, not Ohio State, where he is an alum, Wisconsin. Willie Fritz reportedly almost left Tulane for Georgia Tech, probably based on what we've been hearing. The deal was probably in the bag before Georgia Tech started blabbing about it. And then Fritz apparently pulled back, and the head coaching job at Georgia Tech ended up going to another familiar face for UCF, probably much more familiar than you think. Brent Key, who was obviously the longtime assistant here under George O'Leary, former Georgia Tech offensive lineman, was their interim coach for the final 4 games this year after the UCF game where their initial coach got fired. He went 4-4 in those last 8 games. And he is now the head coach of Georgia Tech. It's coaching season, Drew. And this is another case where things just continue to be weird. I'm still surprised at the Fickell move. Aren't you?
Well, I'm actually not.
I mean, you know the Big Ten better than me. I mean, and you said before, like, one of Wisconsin's big problems is reportedly
it's financial support.
They don't support their program as much as
Wisconsin,
certainly as much as it looks on the outside.
Yeah,
right?
They're notoriously known. I mean, Paul Chris made a huge deal about it. But Wisconsin's known for not really supporting football as much as they should. However, think about this.
Is that? I mean, that's what surprises me, because like I see them as sort of like knocking on the door of that upper part of the Big Ten pyramid. No, I'm not saying they're Ohio State or Michigan or even Penn State, but I feel like they're right there with Penn State. I mean, they have the tradition, Barry Alvarez and all that. They've won Rose Bowls. Are they really, like, what's going on with that?
Well, obviously, Ohio State, Michigan is your top two. Wisconsin and Penn State are the next two. And it's been like that for a long time. Here's the thing. Luke Fickell is a Big Ten guy. Now he that's where he's from. That's what he's grown up. So Ohio State's not getting rid of Ryan Day anytime soon. I mean, there's people say, oh, he can't be Michigan. They're not getting rid of him anytime soon. Penn State, not getting rid of Franklin anytime soon. Harbaugh, not leaving Michigan that we know of, or that Fickell knows of. So what's the next best option? You go to Wisconsin. Wisconsin, fourth best school in the conference as far as football prowess and the ability to rebound and become a contender once again. So you go there. Yeah, Cincinnati may be going into new waters with the Big 12, but let's be honest, there's still a degree of a ceiling there, whereas Wisconsin has technically no ceiling. They run the table. Yeah, they run the table. They're in lines for a CFP national championship. So there's a higher ceiling at Wisconsin versus Cincinnati, who's always going to play second fiddle to Ohio State. Always. I mean, it's UCF's always going to play second fiddle to Florida. They have a 100-year head start. Cincinnati may have, been around in the early days of Ohio State, but let's be honest, the series is 15-2, and the last time Cincinnati beat them was in the 1800s. So, I mean, they're always going to play second fiddle. You're in Wisconsin now. You are the top dog, and there's plenty of guys out there who play football. It's a different style, but you know what? That's Fickell's style. It fits him perfectly. It's heavy on defense. It's big beef on the line. That's what he wants, and that's what he's going to get up there. I think it's a perfect match, and I'm thrilled for him. I remember his year at Ohio State. He struggled, but you know what? It's a good place for him to go. Now the question is, where does Cincinnati want to go after this?
Well, one of the names out there is one Deion Sanders, interestingly enough. And also interestingly enough, Deion has been mentioned in connection with the South Florida job that's also open.
But let's throw one thing in there. He only played baseball in one of those cities.
Fair. He did play for 4 seasons with the Reds, which is as many seasons as he played anywhere else. He also played 4 seasons with the Braves.
Hold on. Where did the Reds do spring training?
That would be Tampa.
Arizona. Well, actually, at the time, it was in Florida. Now it's in Arizona.
Okay,
just checking.
Yeah, it's Goodyear, Arizona now, but it used to be in Florida. Most recently in Sarasota, Florida.
I guess my other question is, like, what's the more fun destination for Deion Sanders, USF or Cincinnati?
Well, if you want to win,
he's also in the mix for He's also in the mix for Colorado, we should say.
Yeah,
reportedly,
if you want to win and go somewhere and have a real stepping stone job, which these are all going to be stepping stone jobs, you go to Cincinnati. The ceiling is way higher. You're assuming a product that's not completely broken. You already have an athletic and school administration that has put resources behind the program and has a recent history of doing so. They've been able to, they ponied up to pay, Luke Fickell to stick around. So they'll pay, and they've already got infrastructure. So there's less of a curve of trying to rebuild a program. South Florida is a tough job to walk into. You're walking into a very tough situation. You have a bad team. You have an academic, you have administration that has not historically supported you in a very long time. So it's who wants to really deal with that? So I think Cincinnati is his best opportunity. Colorado is kind of in between. It's a harder rebuild than Cincinnati, but you're going to be in a Power 5 conference. Both of those are P5 jobs. That's what Deion's looking for. That's what he wants. The only thing that keeps USF on the table is the fact it's located in Florida and you can recruit a certain type of athlete there. But I mean, if I was him, I'd be looking at Cincinnati as the best job and easiest job to go to the next level.
Deion at Jackson State, by the way, 16-5. Where Deion? Everyone remembers. Obviously, Deion went to Florida State. Remember where he went to high school? Where he's from, actually?
No, I don't know much about him personally.
Fort Myers.
Huh.
Yeah. Born and raised in Fort Myers. Went to North Fort Myers High School.
I've been to North Fort Myers High School before. And
yeah, there you go. So there's that. Just pointing that out there. By the way, what do we think of Brent Key at Georgia Tech? I felt like he deserved it. I saw the video with the reaction of the players, with the AD sort of announcing that he was their head coach, that they were dropping the interim tag. The players really love him, and
they fought for him.
Yes, I think that told me a lot about.
They may not be the best team. He may not be the best coach, but the players, there's loyalty there. They fought for him. And I know one of the sticking points with Willie Fritz is he wanted to coach the championship game this week. I thought it was a little odd that Georgia Tech kind of pulled the trigger when they did. Because from what I understand, that was actually a sticking point. Normally when your team's in a conference championship or a coach that you're aiming for, you wait. Nebraska waited before Scott Frost. Word got out during the game. So, I mean, it wasn't like the players heard it and a meltdown happened. No, they waited. So the fact that Georgia Tech pulled the trigger early on this kind of caught me a little bit off guard. Brent Key, 11-year assistant under George O'Leary at UCF. Yeah, obviously we know what happened in 2015, but a little bit of time. He worked for Nick Saban, at Alabama after that. You know what? This is not the same guy. This is not the same coach. And I kind of poo-poo when he was named interim coach because of our experience at UCF. That's biased. But the truth is, he's not the same coach that he was during his time at UCF. We obviously seen him evolve and grow. I mean, come on, you're working under Nick Saban. You're going to learn your stuff. You're going to really, learn another way of doing things. And you know what? He did well with a bad team at Georgia Tech. 4-4, had 2 ranked wins. That's big. That's a good foundation for a tough job because Atlanta,
including in his first game right after they lost to UCF.
Yeah, you're in Atlanta. You're not the number 1 team in your own market. That's always a challenge. We know that firsthand.
Right. All right. Well, it's going to be a fun coaching off season. No doubt about it.
It's called the silly season for a reason. I do want to throw one more thing.
Yeah.
Brent Key is an alum of Georgia Tech, which I think is also another reason why.
That was a factor, I think. Yeah.
I think that's another thing is he is a Tech guy.
And that carries weight at a school like Georgia Tech. It doesn't always carry the same weight in certain schools, but at Tech that matters.
Yeah, and I think that there's a loyalty aspect. I think you're also hiring to keep the guy. Now, I had no doubt that Willie Fritz would have stayed for a while if hired there. He's stuck it out at Tulane longer than many should, and we all know that the Tulane Fighting Fritzes are scrappy. That's what Willie Fritz teams are all about, is that scrappiness, which would have fit well at Georgia Tech. But you know what? I think Brent Key is the right man at the right time at the job for this point.
All right. Well, that takes us to UCF Volleyball. As we talk about the right team at the right time, a team that, in my opinion, has flown under the radar all season and finished the regular season 27-1 with an RPI of 17. As we bring Bryson in to talk a little bit more about the Knights, they got it done on Thanksgiving weekend. It went to the conference championship, went to the final match against Houston. UCF got the victory, but in 5, which means they share the regular season conference championship and were able to hoist the trophy. But due to the tiebreaker, Cincinnati, which went to overall sets in the 2 matches between the 2 teams, Cincinnati beat UCF in 4 up in Cincinnati. This match went to 5, so Cincinnati wins that by a 5-4 margin.
Houston.
Cincinnati got the automatic bid.
Houston
Say that again, Bryson. I'm sorry.
You're saying Cincinnati, it's Houston.
Oh, did I say? Oh, all right. I already started that. All right, 3. Sorry.
Jordan Thompson's gone, Jeff. Deal with it.
No. I'm gonna restart that. So 3, 2, 1. So that takes us to volleyball, who finished the season 27-1, 17 in the RPI. They got the job done in the final match against Houston, winning in 5. But because the tiebreaker was total sets, remember Houston beat them in 4 back on October the 7th. So 5-4 Houston. Both teams share the conference championship because there's no tournament, but Houston gets the automatic bid into the NCAA tournament. Nonetheless, UCF was a lock to get in, and they are in Happy Valley right now to face Yale in the first round, and then they would play the winner of UMBC and Penn State in the second round. Postseason awards, UCF got them all over the place. 4 first-teamers for the American: McKenna Melville, Amber Olsen, no surprise. Abby Hansen, who I thought had a magnificent year, really brought out some new things in the offense. Claudia Dillon, who stepped up again. And then 1 second-teamer, Kari Zumak, who I think was a tremendous addition for this team as well. McKenna Melville obviously won Player of the Year. Amber Olsen won Setter of the Year. And here they are at 27-1, Bryson Turner, getting ready to take on Yale, a team that, we talked about, flying under the radar. Yale flew under the radar this year. They won the Ivy League, 23-2, 13-1 in the conference. Interestingly enough, their only 2 losses were at Florida State and at Princeton. These 2 teams share a common opponent. Both UCF and Yale beat Syracuse earlier this year. Yale is 3rd in the country in aces per set, 5th, more importantly, 5th in the country in opposing hit percentage allowed at 147. UCF comes in 13th in the country in that category, but 3rd in the country in offensive hit percentage at 317. So this kind of echoes like that High Point match a couple of years ago during the COVID year, Bryson, where, we have a team, if you're not careful, they will get you.
Oh, yeah. Dagenet said something very interesting when we talked to him at the Selection Show watch party, which you can watch in full on the Black and Gold Banneret YouTube channel. He mentioned that in the NCAA tournament that the numbers in the regular season, in a sense, don't matter. You can have a leading offensive team that could hit like 50 or 150 hitting percentage in one particular match. In this instance, the numbers are telling us that these are 2 very good defensive teams going up against each other, top 15 in opposing hitting percentage. And so it's really, but there's an offense that's going to prevail here. And it's going to be intriguing to see how they kind of feel each other out in that game. Now, that said, with a potential match against Penn State the next day, if you win, which is a Big Ten team, and we all know how big Big Ten volleyball is, you really want to try to put Yale away in the least amount of time possible if you're UCF volleyball.
Yeah. Obviously, you want to try and handle Yale. I mean, I personally am like, okay, yeah, I get that, but it's a tournament, everyone's good. Handle them any way you can. Penn State, 24-7 this year, 13-7 in the conference, which means they were 11-0 outside of conference. They actually won their first 12 matches. Including wins at Iowa State, home against West Virginia, at LSU, at Stanford, or rather, I should say at a neutral site against Stanford and Oregon. They come in, obviously one of the bigger teams in the country, 11th in blocks per set. Their numbers are kind of skewed because they're playing all Big Ten opponents anyway. But that's the big prize. And that's, assuming UCF is able to get through this Ivy League champion Yale team, they're likely going to face Penn State in another situation similar to last year, where they had to face UCLA at Pauley Pavilion. One of the countries, not just traditionally, but overall better teams. But I get the feeling, though, Bryson, that Penn State can be had here. What did did anyone give any hints to that when you talked to them, or were they just, no, man, I don't want to talk about that. We just want to talk about Yale?
Well, Dagenet did say that he liked this draw, or at least where they're playing, a lot better than the UCLA draw and I think for a couple of reasons. One, the time zone difference. That's got to be huge for him because jet lag is real. Secondly, it's in his old backyard in the Big Ten. And so
he coached at Michigan State as an assistant prior to coming to UCF.
Correct. And so he's familiar with the environment. So I think that this one is I think that perhaps this will be a lot better because they're going to be more, at least for Dagenet, it'll be a little more familiar with him going in there. Of course, the Big Ten atmosphere, a little familiar for McKenna Melville growing up in Minnesota.
Yep.
So I will say with Penn State, there's a bit of a difference between them and Yale, is that while their opponent hitting percentage is 80th in the country, but like you said, Big Ten teams kind of skew that. They are 4th in the country in team total blocks. So those blockers will definitely be something that they're going to look out for. But I do think that this is going to be a scenario where we have McKenna Melville. Everybody knows that. And this is going to be a really big...
We have McKenna Melville and you don't.
Right. But there's going to have to be other players that are going to step up. Dagenet talked about how the UCF and Houston match, that felt like an NCAA tournament match. That matchup had 1,566 people in there, which is more than the Miami match, which we said back in September was the second highest regular season attendance at the venue. The Houston game beat that. And in that matchup, while McKenna Melville still got 29 kills, Claudia Dillon still needed to have the offensive game of her career to help get that win. She finished with 18 kills. She never had higher than 11 in a single match before this. So people like Claudia Dillon or Kari Zumock or Abby Hansen, there's going to need to be somebody that needs to step up big time in these NCAA tournament games, especially if they end up going against Penn State with the blockers that they have.
Penn State's head coach, by the way, Katie Schumacher-Cauley, who she took over. This is her first season at Penn State. Took over for Russ Rose, of course, who has coached Penn State volleyball for forever. Won a bunch of national titles, including 4 in a row at one point. She was an associate head coach at Penn State for 3 years prior to becoming the head coach at Penn State. This is, by the way, interesting note about Penn State. There has never been an NCAA tournament that they have missed. They've been to every single one, 42 in a row. So, but the question is, what do they do against UCF? We will find out. The first serve for UCF against Yale will be Friday, 5 p.m. at Rec Hall in State College. I don't see any TV on this, but I imagine it's going to be on ESPN Plus.
Yes, all ESPN platforms will be carrying all of the NCAA tournament.
Right, gotcha. And then if UCF defeats Yale, then they would play. There's no day off. They would play the following day, that Saturday. So that could be that could be a busy Saturday for us. If UCF gets through to play Penn State, and then obviously the conference championship game on Saturday, as well as we wrap it up here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast on what will be a busy weekend. We're going to be deciding championships. We've got the NCAA tournament. We've got basketball coming up. It's going to be busy. You can follow it all on blackandgoldbanneret.com. You can follow us on social media as well. Facebook.com/blackandgoldbanneret. UCF Banneret _SBN on Twitter. Follow us individually. I'm at Jeff_Sharon. Kyle, who was on earlier, was at the SOTG. Drew, Statboy Drew. It's Bryson Turner. Also, Eric Lopez, Elo, and all of our great photographers are also on Twitter as well as Instagram, Black and Gold Banneret. And if you subscribe to this podcast, we appreciate you. Leave us a reading. If not, please do subscribe to the podcast and share it with a UCF friend of yours as well. And of course, don't forget our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Black and Gold Banneret. Wow. We got through that in a hurry. There was a lot to talk about too, but I'm excited for it. What are we thinking, guys? This Saturday, man, this is it, right? We got football, we got volleyball. Hopefully they get through the first round. They play. I mean, it's going to be, this might be the biggest weekend of the year so far, no?
I mean, it could be. Let's see how it rolls out.
Way to be enthusiastic about that one, Drew.
I mean,
I'm actually thinking of, like, can any weekend actually beat that? And I had to think back on it.
I mean, maybe if there's a big weekend regular season football game, or maybe like a basketball with like a big baseball opponent.
I don't know. That whole softball regional was pretty big.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so much I was just missing it. I was trying to think back of what else could actually match up with it. But again, either you're the GOAT or you're the GOAT, as George O'Leary used to say. If you lose, if you win, yay! Great move. So we'll see how this weekend plays out.
I'll say this. Imagine if both the football team and the volleyball team get to play Penn State in the postseason. I know you said there's less storylines than the Tennessee game, but I think as far as a full UCF athletics standpoint, if both UCF volleyball and football play Penn State, that'd be kind of cool.
Only if they win. If they lose both, then it's a terrible idea.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from, Bryson. I want the Vols.
Oh no, me too. I'm just saying.
I want the Vols.
It's not a complete loss if it ends up not going our way.
Yeah. Hey, listen. First things first. Let's get through Friday volleyball. Let's get through Saturday football, and then we can talk about even more postseason after that. For all of us here at the Black and Gold Banneret, I'm Jeff Sharon saying thank you so much for listening. Enjoy the weekend. Thank you, Drew. Thank you, Bryson. Thank you, Kyle. Go Knights, charge on. Enjoy this Saturday. If you're traveling up to New Orleans, be safe up there. Have fun. Bring home a dub.